the fruits of labor of the productive. You know,
Yeah, I agree with what you said. I also want to pose a question to you.
what's that?
All right. Do you believe that the South Africans have a sorry, South Africans, the Boers have a valid claim to South Africa and stuff?
Yeah, I do. I believe that they do because the Boers were the first ones to the coast, and basically they just created. There was no jobs there before they came. They just created work, and so that's where a lot of the Africans came from. The Zulu, the Khoisan. They mainly came for work.
So if I know there's some controversy regarding this topic. They say the Zulus massacred the Khoisan. Some say the Boers massacred the Zulu and Khoisan. There's a lot of information about that. But I personally want to know. So you basically making an argument that if you build something up in a particular area, that you are entitled to that space. For instance, if kind of using America as an example, do you think I guess it's. Do you think America was that white America has a claim for America?
I mean, I think they have just as valid a claim on it than anybody else has a claim in this world. I love history, and so I do believe that if a place is conquered by a nation of people, then it's theirs. But it can always be conquered again. If you live by the sword, die by the sword, man. You know.
That's true,
So
and
the Turks took over Byzantium and or was it Constantinople and renamed it to Istanbul. So might makes right in this world, whether you like it or not. I mean, we're still animals at the end of the day.
see that's a good point, and that's also why I wanted to kind of segue into what I was saying. So if that's the case, the South Africans have a right to kick the Boers out if through the might of right if they're able to do it, if they're able to marshal their
Yeah,
power together and kick them out.
that's a successful invasion. But if that was the point of them coming, they came for work and they ultimately invaded and kicked the Boer out. So be it. But they're begging for the Boer to come back because they don't know how to farm.
I think some of that is because it's weird because during slavery, Africans were. I know America. I think it was Liberia. No, it was someplace. They took Africans, a particular group of Africans, out because they were renowned for their agricultural skills and needed to. They wanted them in America. I'll get the exact publication, but I think on that is one of the biggest things that also is hurting African nations. I mean, certain nations in Africa is that the Zimbabwe or Rhodesia, the sanctions that America puts on them, because sanctions in of themselves is a form of warfare. The Venezuelans have said the same thing, and the Japanese. This led
Economic
to the Japanese
warfare,
bombing
in a sense.
Pearl Harbor. You know what I mean? So it's easy to say I mean this in a sense they're begging, but yeah, I can understand it because if a country like America would have levied sanctions on you, that means that the other nations within the agreement of NATO can't don't want to trade with you, but also countries that aren't even involved in that so-called NATO alliance, they don't want them to mess with you. I mean, look at how angry the Americans are that the Venezuelans, I believe the Iranians and Venezuelans are, I think the Iranians are refining the Venezuelan oil because Venezuela can't do it or something like that. America's very angry because they say you're violating our sanctions, but America has sanctions on Iran too. But now you're putting sanctions on a developing country for wanting to be to for wanting to be independent, and then somehow using that as an excuse as to why black people they're just incompetent. Look, they can't look at Rhodesia or look at Zimbabwe. But really, it's the sanctions is one of the most damning pieces of warfare.
Hmm. I mean, I agree it's a form of economic warfare, but I don't know, man. It's
I mean,
interesting.
that's just my perspective on the whole situation.
Thinking
But
about
you
it,
know,
go on.
but I was just gonna say when you said might have right, I
Right.
believe. I mean, that's proof that I think that statement is very true on what you said because look look at what's around us. Honestly, America isn't founded on so much principles of altruism as it is the use of force. Because well, you have order and democracy for the people who,
I
for a
mean,
certain amount of people, but for the
America was
other nations, they only knew warfare. But the U.S. conquered America, and so the Might of Right does have valid reasoning. My only thing is this: you reap what you sow, and if Africans choose to kick Europeans out of Africa, I don't really think it's realistic right now. But if that does happen, then that's a consequence of might of right. And if the Africans get stronger and can do that, then we have to accept the principles, which I think, and which I know you're agreeing to too.
I mean, if they so choose, if they took over the country and they see it as an invasion, they so choose to throw out white people, so be it. It's their country, and they have them
Yeah,
outnumbered. What is it? 15% of the population is Boer, I think maybe, and so they have the numbers. So what can you do? I just don't like I don't like the raping they do to the young women, or the slaughtering they do. I mean, that's not right to me. I don't.
I mean, I agree with you, and I don't want to make excuses, but I just let's be real here. You and I are the product, and every African American, mostly all African Americans, are the product of rape one way down the line through European genetics. I mean, at least 30%. All black people have 30% European ancestry. That basically means there was so much rape going on that we're genetically distinct from other. I don't want to say distinct because we're still Africans, but we're genetically different from native-born Africans because of the introduction of the European into our gene pool, and it's like
There's
it.
a lot of
Look,
people who aren't willing to admit that, though.
yeah, yeah, and I see the rape is unfortunate, and so is the murder, but I honestly find it hard to have sympathy for the Boers, knowing what happened to apartheid. We can say, oh, you know, because they took advantage of the Africans there. And I know stuff wasn't perfect. Everything, there was fighting on both sides. But in a lot of cases, the Boers took advantage of the tribalism between the Xhosa and the Zulu and pitted them against each other. I mean, sure there were some bystanders that happened to be Boer, but for the ruling party, and your average South African that was white benefited from the provision that apartheid brought, and now they're suffering for it. So I don't know.